tremendous year, getting a lot of things done creatively. So with that, I don't see anything that's like a real, that's standing out that becomes a major issue for us until it becomes an issue, right? Until we have some major thing blow up at one of our buildings.
All right.
Did you lose Councillor Cannell somehow?
Possible. I'm gonna see if I can unmute. He may have dipped out.
Hi, folks. Can you hear me? Dave?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, my apologies. My apologies. My internet dropped, so I unmuted on the phone. I think I'm back here. My camera's going to go in and out. I apologize. Not sure who raised their hand first, but I see Councilors Murphy and Linehan, and we'll go in that order if that's okay. So, Councilor Murphy.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to start this out the way that I started out the last meeting. I believe I spoke first when we had our previous two director heads in here. And we all know that we're facing a rather unusual year where this budget is kind of a template as opposed to what I believe will, from what's going on will be the final budget. And, one of the things that I don't expect you to answer this evening, but I would hope, knowing what's going on at the State House and the fact that we haven't gotten our local aid figures yet, that you are looking at this budget and looking at what we might be able to reduce. I know you're level funded, and that in itself is tough, as prices of everything go up. But we are probably going to be faced with a reality that none of us want to be faced with during this budget cycle and probably the next budget cycle. So hoping that you walk away from this meeting knowing that, if we're back here again in October, you'll be coming in with some real thoughtful ways of how you'll be able to reduce services, but also sharpen the pencil a little bit more. You don't have to answer that, but that's kind of a segue to what I really want to talk about, and that is all of the Honeywell upgrades. And we have just spent the past year doing a tremendous amount of upgrades to our schools and our office buildings. And I'd like you to speak a little bit, if you would, about how you feel those savings have actually been brought forth from the presentation that you gave us originally and what we might expect to see in the coming years.
Sure. So last year, we reduced our gas and energy bills through the Honeywell contract that we did with them, the performance upgrade contract. We did about a $50,000 reduction in our energy costs on our budget last year, not knowing we have not had a full year of heat and AC with the project being 100% complete. We are right now in the final stages of finishing up our project with Honeywell. We've replaced motors and pumps and drives, and as we discussed in the past. In addition to that, we found a bunch of creative ways through grants and energy grants. For the most part, we've replaced some boilers and we replaced some water heaters. So we've been able to go above and beyond what we thought. So this year, or at the end of next month, where we will be 100% complete with our Honeywell project, the measurement and verification process of that will go into effect, where every month Honeywell will measure what we're using for energy and quantifying those savings. So I expect those numbers to jump in the saving side of things from our gas and electric bills, both on the city side and on the school side. So I think we'll see those numbers. The problem is, Counselor, we don't know what those are right now because we haven't been through a full cycle of heat and cooling, and cooling's a huge burden on the power side of things. So we won't know that till next year's budget, but I'm confident that you'll see our utility costs drop dramatically. In addition to that, the solar array, we have a solar array as part of our the Honeywell project down at the DPW. that's going to save us on energy costs down there as well.
So have you built any of those savings into next year's budget, or is that something that there might be some, I don't want to call free cash, but there might be some additional savings that could go to possibly, you started off by speaking about the fact that all of our buildings were aging. If we are lucky enough that the local aid numbers hold, is that something that you would see going to building maintenance to make sure that we keep our plants in tip-top shape, or at least good shape, passable shape?
Yeah, so I mean, with that, our buildings are in great shape, just so you know. They for their age, and we've done a great job in the past years that I've been here anyway, that the buildings are actually in great shape for their age. So we have taken into consideration, like I said, there's about a $50,000 reduction already in those costs. Now, next year, I just don't know. I mean, we could take a guesstimate at what they're going to be, but we really have no idea until we kind of get through this cycle. But if we start, with our run rate and seeing that we're way ahead of schedule from the energy costs, of course, we could reallocate those funds.
Okay.
We track them on a monthly basis, just so you know.
No, that's good. I do have a few more questions, but I don't want to stop other people from asking questions. So why don't we go through the questions and then you can come back to me, Mr. Chairman, if you would, when everyone else has had an opportunity to ask a question. Okay, did we lose Councilor Kamel?
I think he's frozen.
Councilor Murphy, thank you very much. Yeah, my computer is frozen, but I am on the phone. So if folks don't mind, I'm going to tell you what the queue is for the next few as my computer blinks in and out here. So it's going to be Councilor Linehan, Councilor Condon, and then Councilor DiMaria. All right, Councilor Linehan.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councilor Murphy, for putting out a quick pause, because I actually had a similar question, almost the same thing about the energy efficiency, but I wanted to build on that and just ask Director Rubin, are you, and I know this is hard because we don't know about local aid and we don't know a lot about what the school year is going to look like, but thinking ahead to projecting the utility savings, yet also recognizing that we may have children in some of the buildings at staggered times, or even I would imagine on the staff side as well in other buildings that we could be using the buildings for longer. Is it possible to project additional utility costs based on the buildings being used more hours or different times? Is that something that we can even begin to think about now? And have you, I guess I'm just curious, knowing there's a lot of X factors that we just don't know, is that something that we can project at this point?
So I don't know if we could come up with specific numbers. I've been working with the school department and I'm on the superintendent's task force about reopening the schools and whatnot. So the business manager, Tony Mertz, and myself have been kind of running different scenarios as far as what this year will look like. So I guess you're right. We don't know if we're going to have longer days and maybe staggering the kids coming and going. But at the same point, we operated at 100% last year. The schools ran through the summer. We had summer programs in a bunch of places. So if we can streamline, and this is what we're working towards, my 5 years here, we've kind of been getting to a point where we can streamline where we hold the summer school, where we hold the summer, which buildings, and rather than run them all, maybe we can narrow it to 3 of the schools. So we've been kind of working on that. But to answer your question, I guess it'd be really hard to project the number and say, hey, we could save X amount of dollars if we, I mean, we're down to where we could project per day, per building, what it's going to cost, but we just don't know what the variables are yet of how many hours they're going to run these buildings.
Thank you. That does make sense. And then a related question is, I'm wondering if we have been exploring the potential for additional solar arrays on municipal buildings. Is that something that's in the offing? That, because I could imagine that might be an upfront cost, but could realize some very large savings down the line, and this might be a time to do it.
So we've looked into that over the course of the past few years. The problem we have is some of the roof space is not perfect for, like the DPW. We had put a brand new roof on a few years back, so it lent itself beautifully, and there's no equipment up there. We had no rooftops or no motors that are coming through the ceiling. So it was a perfect opportunity. Some of the schools, the cost that we'd have to outlay for the return we're going to get, because we can't get a big enough array on there, didn't make a lot of sense. But we've explored it, and as the technology changes, it's like your cell phones. Every year they come out with a new panel. We keep exploring to see if it would make sense down the line to come back and revisit it.
that's great to hear. Thank you. I'm all set.
Thanks.
All right, we're gonna go to Councilor Condon now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Eric, you say the buildings are in great shape. When you say that, do we have any kind of problems? Because it's 20 years old. Any kind of problems like with the roof or leaks or anything like that?
Well, just to clarify, right, they're in great shape for their age. I was able to go out and source a vendor that we're fixing roof leaks. There's always little leaks here and there. Our biggest culprit coming down the road are those roofs, right? So the roofs are PVC roofs. There's a lot of wear and tear on those, but we've been able to, fix and repair. They haven't been bad enough that we haven't been able to repair them. So there's always little things, Council, that are coming. The big items are your mechanicals and your roofing. And as I said, we were lucky enough to get 3 new boilers this year on an energy grant that I got. So we've been able to pick away at some of this stuff. But the roofs are probably one of your big items that are coming.
What about the AC in the buildings?
Yeah, so again, we've been extremely lucky with trying to keep everything running consistently. So we have this past year we had a couple students from the Voc that were in the HVAC shop that we were able to utilize to help us maintain a bunch of our equipment in-house. So we're maintaining it, and as they break, we're repairing them. So I mean, they're not new units. They're not as efficient as new units would be, but again, it's a huge capital investment when we want to start. We replaced some at the BB through the Honeywell project, if you remember. So
Right.
we're in better shape there, but we just continue to maintain them and make sure that we're doing the best we can to keep them running. But they're all, as far as I know right now, everything's up and running. We haven't gone into full AC tilt mode yet, but we will be there shortly if they start occupying the buildings. We have them basically shut down and just running the administration zones at this point.
Do you expect the buildings to be occupied this summer?
So it's kind of still, the jury's still out on that. We've been talking with the school department. I don't know, I know there could potentially be some summer programs that come back into the schools, if depending on, the public health, where that all goes. So I'm anticipating we're going to have some use in these buildings, just because I have to be prepared for them to be occupied. For us to convert from heat to air conditioning, it's not like your home where you can just flip a switch. We have to drain. They're what they call 2-pipe systems. So the system's filled with hot water for heat or cold water for air conditioner. So it's about a month transition to get from heat to AC. So I have to be prepared if we're going to utilize these buildings, and I have to make the assumption that we are, even though we're not running the equipment now, we're prepared to.
Are they broken down into zones
They are.
for the AC?
They are.
So you don't have to put the AC in for the whole building?
That's correct. We have 6 to 8 rooftops in every building on or about, other than the high school. The high school is bigger and the Salem one's bigger, but the K through 8's all between 6 and 8 units that we run different zones depending on where it's occupied.
What about your vehicles and capital equipment what kind of shape are you in as a department?
The big thing for us is the plow vehicles. So we're making do with we got a couple vehicles from the housing authority a few years back. They were upgrading that, and we're using those for plow trucks. So I don't know if everybody knows, my team assists DPW. We do all the schools and all the public buildings and all the parking lots. And when DPW is done with the streets, any of the contractors, if they're available, will get turned over to us. But my guys are all responsible for snow removal, and we have our own, like I said, our own pickups that we use for doing that. So as I said, I'm sure every department head's got to come in here and tell you they could use more, and we could certainly use more, but I know under the current situation, we'll make do, we'll make it work.
Are we utilizing Honeywell in the parks at all to improve our lighting?
We are, yep. So there was, the parks all got upgraded lighting, and certain lights that were able to be swapped out were swapped out. And I do have a list of each of the parks that got the upgrades for LED lights.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, we'll move.
Mr. Chairman,
Can you hear me?
yeah, I don't have a way of electronically signaling my hand up. but May I jump in and ask just a couple of questions? On the LED
Actually,
light,
we're gonna go.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman,
We're gonna go.
I think you said I can go. Is that right?
Earlier, you said that Councilor DeMarie was next in the queue.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Hello?
Hi.
We hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Councilor Anderson. And thank you, Eric, for all you do. I can't believe it's already been 5 years. I just can't even believe it. That's wonderful. I see that you have lowered your total proposed budget by $56,000, so that's very good. You know how important solar is to me, so thank you for that. But I do have just a couple of quick questions. In the line item for Oak Grove Community, annually there's a $2,800 line item. Can you just share with me what that is for?
Sure. That is, we maintain Oak Grove Community Center, both landscaping, lights, electric. That's kind of the only funds we have that we utilize for that. That building gets a lot of, being across from the train station, we're constantly, with the facilities around the building more so than in the building. But that's basically gas, heat, electric, and landscaping.
Okay, all right. And then your school landscaping services went from 49.4 to 80,000. Can you
Yeah.
tell me what that increase was?
I can. So it's kind of twofold, right? So we went out to bid was it last year? So that represents the actuals. We basically rolled everything up into that landscaping item. Before, we would have like the school separate from the city. And what we did is when the controller's office hired the procurement officer, we went out to bid and paying prevailing wage, and that's kind of where we bundled it all together, and that's kind of the act. There's no extras. We used to pay extras here and there when we did like the prom and we did certain other items at the school. So we basically took everything that we were paying outside of it and rolled it up into one line item.
So that's not snow removal, is it?
No, that's just landscaping. So that's actual numbers. We have landscapers that do spring cleanup, they do fall cleanup. We have a mandate, like on the tot lots, we have to have a specific amount of the playground mulch in there. That's basically all the requirements. We rolled up, we have a prom package. So for the prom for the high school, we do a special something outside on Holden Street. There's flowers around the seal. That kind of encompasses the entire city on my side, the senior center, it's kind of everything bundled into one line item now.
Oh. Okay, that's a big jump, 30,000.
So again, when we went out with, it's a big jump, and we went out to bid, publicly, and that's kind of, they were the low bidder.
Really? Okay. And last question is, and I maybe should know this, but firebox monitoring and firebox maintenance. Do we still have fireboxes?
So we don't. A while back, I think it was the second year I came on, the fire department discontinued the old copper fireboxes. So what that is we have communicators in all of our buildings that have to be monitored and maintained. So somewhat like your home burglar or fire alarm, we maintain those and we monitor those with a third party. And that's the cost for a monthly monitoring fee. So if and when we get calls in the middle of the night, that's the third party that notifies myself and the fire department.
Oh, and was that something that went out to RFP, or was that the company that we used? It did.
So
And they
that
came
went
in
out,
below it.
yep, that went out back, like I said, a few years ago when they changed over those fireboxes, the ones you used to see in the
Yeah.
street. That went out back then, and we went out for, I think it was a 2-year contract on those as well.
And actuals, do they come close to 6,000, 15,000 actuals?
They do, and again, like everything else, right, depending on the maintenance, right? So we've had a couple fire panels in our buildings, which, you know, as you know, you can't be without, that have burnt up and gone bad. So we actually had to replace panels. So again, we can do that through my regular maintenance account if I run out of money there. So these are conservative numbers.
Okay. Well, we have to be conservative more so than ever, but I honestly thank you so much. You have a great department and you're doing a great job. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor DiMaria. Councilor Winslow.
All right, thank you. Eric, a few questions related to the maintenance budget. I think people talked a little bit about energy and the impact of COVID-19. What's happening with maintenance? I see there's a $50,000 increase. Was that any way related to COVID-19, or is that just I want to understand that.
You're talking on the school maintenance item, correct?
School maintenance budget, yes.
Yep. So in the school maintenance budget, so that was based upon, again, real actuals from the prior year before. We just run into kind of keep these buildings running from, as I said, break, fix, repair type stuff. So this year, it's legit items that we have to just for air conditioning, heat, keeping things going. It was just an increase in our school maintenance side. We tend to run out every year on the school side with our buildings on the school maintenance account, just nature of the beast.
Does that include cleaning services as well, or is that school maintenance?
No, the cleaning services come out of the school side budget for the school department.
Okay, all right. Just related to gasoline, are you seeing any savings that you anticipate that might be there? Not a big item, but 20%, 20%.
Yeah, I think that, gasoline from the vehicle side of things probably, I don't know that we hit that number every year. I think, this year might be a little less as well, just because of I don't have the same staff as I had the prior year as well. So I think that might not be, but it's what, $10,558 in gas. It's kind of it's a more of an actual than what we've been running.
Now, the City Hall lease, how certain are we not to have expenses in next fiscal year? I mean, are we pretty much on track on that?
Yes, so the City Hall lease, as you know, we got a little hung up with the everything shutting down from the construction of the new City Hall. I'm happy to say the new City Hall looks amazing, and we're at the end. So I don't want to jinx us, but with all the luck, with everything going the way it should be, I believe July should be our last month with the City Hall lease as well. We should be all moved into our new spots.
So we're sort of on a month to month, so there might be a month or two where we're still transitioning kind of thing, moving stuff. Is that?
Yeah, so our lease was up, and because of the overrun of time on the new building, we just a month to month. So I stay in contact with our landlord now and let them know basically, on a 30-day rolling, saying, okay, I believe July will be the last month.
So in terms of just overall COVID-19, do you anticipate any extra costs in terms of cleaning or changing of filters or other type of things that we might have to anticipate?
We've been utilizing our existing budget for all that now. So Chuck Brannigan's been good about helping us out with getting. So we've just been trying to source supplies wherever he could. So I think I can keep that encompassed into the budget I already have. But we're providing hand sanitizers and wipes and cleaning solutions for the entire city staff now. Right, everybody's back to work as of last Monday. We've been able to give everybody supplies and everybody's desks, so they are prepared, to kind of maintain their own space, so to speak. So I think we can handle that throughout our existing budget.
What about personal protection? I mean, is, mask and other type of things, is that something you're fitting in your budget? Okay.
Yeah, so, and again, we've been able to source a bunch of that stuff through Chuck's office, the controller's office, been able to source a bunch of that stuff. I have a supplier who we use for all our clean supplies. We've been able to get a bunch of the masks and the disinfectants and stuff, so we've been fine with that.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Winslow. My deepest apologies, Councilor Anderson. I did not intend to skip you. I promise you could go next. I apologize. Councilor Anderson.
Thank you. Eric, just looking at the overall budget, you had a big increase last year in the administrative salaries. What's the account for that? What 2019, it was 230,000. Then it jumped about $50,000. What was that?
So that was last year when Dorothy Kurger was moved over from her position into public facilities.
Okay.
That was that last year's budget. So that's the extra 50, I think it was 51,000 last year was the difference.
Okay. So the other small increases in the 2021 budget for administrative salaries, for the labor salaries, those are just reflecting annual increases?
Yes, that's correct.
You don't have any further staff
That's
than you
correct.
had last year. Okay.
That's correct.
And so I want to go back to the question about landscaping. I heard the response that you gave to Councilor Di Maria about the increased costs in landscaping. I don't quite understand how we go an extra $30,000 after going out to bid. Would you go over that with me once again, please?
Yeah, so we used to utilize I'll say local contractors we could for landscaping for all the schools and all the city buildings, and we would have a basis of scope of services that we would provide, that we would put out there. And then after that base scope of services was taken care of there was always be extras. So we would always then get a bill extra for, like I said, the prom package or the city seal or there would always be extra items that then they charge us.
So there were add-ons that you were paying for separately.
Correct.
And now those things are being rolled into an overall budget. What are those add-ons that are making up the 30,000?
Well, so it's not just the add-ons, but in addition to that, we go out from public procurement law, we go out to bid through the bidding process now. And part of that bidding process is we're getting, companies from all over coming in and bidding on the contracts. And based upon the wages and the prevailing wage rates through landscaping services, these are the numbers that are coming back. We use the state bid contract. So these numbers are from contractors that are vested through the state already. So a lot of this, part of it comes out through the state's contract utilizing their prevailing wage rate. And then the other part is we bundled all of our landscaping services together. So as I said, like clean up.
If you separate those two things out, if you separate out the extras that you would otherwise pay for as add-ons from the increase overall proposal, what's the breakdown there? How much of the extra?
It's not real. So again, I guess the clarification, the extras aren't like what we'd like to have. It's not like, oh, this would be nice to do. It's an extra. It's stuff like the prom package. So we were paying separate for the prom. So it's no different than like the pest control, right? So we are responsible for all the pest control in the city from a budget standpoint. So Director Webb, he still maintains the bike path and he still maintains the public areas from the pest control, but from a budget standpoint, because we go out to bid and use one contractor, it's in my budget. So it's kind of the same thing with landscaping, whereas we would do the proms, we would do the city seal, we would do the mulching of the playground. So instead of doing them all separate, we put all that together and said, this is truly the same contractor that does it. Let's put it out to bid and get cheaper rates, because if you break it all down separately, we're probably paying more than as we rolled it all together in one.
Okay, I understand. I may have used the wrong term, separates, extras. That there are other services that you're paying for separately.
Correct. And I might have said, so I apologize.
And I guess I'm asking, what's the delta between those two? You know, what are those that are the ones that we would otherwise be paying for that are now rolled into this $80,000 budget versus the increase that the landscaping bids are coming in? And then let me just go on to say that it just seems to me that if the bids are coming in too high, we need to be questioning that. We need to be keeping within a budget and not, and thought, that's, you hear where I'm going.
I do. So again, it all depends on the services we want, right? So if we do not, the stuff we could cut out of the landscape bid per se, this stuff that we just can't, from the tot lot perspective, we have to maintain certain standards in those tot lots. We don't necessarily have to do like, again, decorate for the prom on Holden Street. We don't necessarily have to do the flowers at the Steel on Salem Street. We don't necessarily have to do mulch at some of the city buildings, the senior, like this, it's all stuff that you could cut out if we wanted to. But I don't know, I can't quantify what that number would be.
Yeah, I understand. And I'm not suggesting that you cut those things out. I was just looking for an explanation as to what were the things that we were otherwise paying for out of a different source, and what was the extra and what was the increased cost that was coming as a result of the bid. And so I've tried to ask that 4 different ways, and maybe offline you can give me some response on that one.
I'm sorry, I just don't have the actual numbers. So again, my thinking was, let's roll all the landscaping up together, put it out to bid, we'll get a better rate than if we do piecemeal.
Yeah, and then otherwise, obviously, your budget is pretty much following along with what you had to do before, and where you may have savings in one account, like your gasoline, as the question was asked. You know, maybe you won't spend all your $10,000, but you need to budget it. So fine, and I'm very pleased with the operation of the public facilities under your leadership and the crew that works there. You guys do a great job, and we need to do all that we can to support your efforts. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson. Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Councilor Kamel. Hey, Eric. I had a question about Oak Grove also. It looks like the actual is actually 0, so it doesn't look like we're actually using any of that budget. Do you know why Oak Grove is the only building that's separated out for its maintenance? Why wouldn't that be under the overall building maintenance?
So I don't, Council, I don't have an answer for that. It was like that when I came on board, and I'm assuming they just had it broke out from years past. So we always left it like that. But
would you be opposed if we rolled it into your overall building maintenance budget?
No, not at all.
Okay. And then you had said that, so the City Hall lease, I see the actuals this year are 80 grand over. Is that, and then I don't see any budget being brought forward in 2021. Is that 80 grand accruals for rent in July?
Yeah, right. So our lease that was expired, or, you know, we satisfied our lease, then we just went on month to month until we thought, as you know, we would be out of there a few months back. And unfortunately, with the current situation, we got delayed. So there's no lease in 2021 because one way or another, we'll be out of there.
Great. And then we all know that some of the the reasons why we're delayed are out of our control. You and Ron Hogan are going to try to recoup hopefully some of that 80 grand.
Correct.
In overage.
Yep.
Okay. At Malden High School, you had talked about lighting earlier. I noticed that some of the period lights outside of the high school have been replaced with LEDs. Is that part of the Honeywell project? Will all of the lights outside the high school be changed?
Yes, they should almost all be done right now, other than like specific ones that we're waiting on decorative lamps for.
Okay. And then school maintenance and landscaping. I see it's under your budget. Is this captured in our local contribution for the school budget? You know how that?
Yeah, it is. We tally up of what we spend from our school maintenance account that then gets applied to the school side. but too
Awesome.
expensive.
And then one last thing, when it comes to school maintenance, I went to the Salem Wood back when it opened up, 1999, 2000. And I've noticed since being out there recently that the plaza looks to be sinking. It's probably about 6 inches or more. Do we know why that's happening?
So we've investigated that a few different times, and we've had some LSPs come in and engineers come in and look at that. We believe we thought it might have been the pipe that was running under that plaza. We've scoped that pipe. We took it apart, put a camera in there to see what was going on, and I truly believe that at this point it's more from the soils they were soft. There was some peat back there, and the actual plaza itself is just settling. So that is something that at some point where, that's another big freight train coming down the line here. That's something that we'll have to address. But again, I don't believe I've had the building commissioner out with me as well. We've walked it a million times. I don't think we're in danger of it going any further. I think it's done all it's going to do, but at some point, I think we got to think about doing something there as well.
Does it threaten any structural integrity to the building or the retaining wall?
It doesn't. That's the difference, right? So the building is built on, from my understanding, is on the geopiers. The slab of the plaza is not, and that's why you see the plaza sinking from the building. It's like kind of detached itself from the building, but it's not a structural issue to the building itself.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm all set.
Councilor O'Malley, thank you very much. We're going to go to Councilor Spatafora and then Councilor Murphy.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, can you hear me, Eric?
Yep.
Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Rubin. I think a lot of my questions might have been answered, but my first question is, and I know it might seem bad timing to say it, but I've been reading a lot of cities and towns now are putting together crisis management books. A year ago, unfortunately, it was school shootings, and now it's pandemics. From your position, especially with public, it's not necessarily public safety, but it's public facilities. And, we have a lot of children in those schools. We have a lot of employees in these schools. Is there any plans to start thinking like that in terms of building crisis management decks for certain situations? The reason why I say that is Councilor Murphy hit the nail on the head. I mean, if you read in the local news, you don't have to be a genius to realize that the Commonwealth is already planning to cut sometime this year. But I think given all the talk now, we have to prepare for the worst, both in terms of less revenue, but certainly additional cost. So my question is, certainly not going to ask you to do it now, but I think over the next year, we should put together some scenarios where flooding, power goes out. I know we got a bunch of generators. That's probably a big maintenance expense too, right? In terms of that. And I know you've been one to talk about proactively looking at getting to the problems before we need to fix the big problem. So my thought process is probably more of a statement than a question, is that's something I think we should be looking at from a facility standpoint. We've always talked about the police and fire, and certainly important, but I think the facilities buildings have to look at these scenarios as well, because cost is a factor now.
And just for the record, so I belong to a municipal organization of facility managers across the state. We've all been talking about these types of scenarios as well. So nothing formal has come out yet, but I'm working with them to kind of, if and when we decide to kind of jump into that realm, we at least have some information to bring to the table.
And then, Mr. Rubin, I know the high school went through a big camera. They put a bunch of cameras in this year. Is that correct? Is that they went out to bid a pretty large contract, right? I know there was already cameras as part of the $60 or $70 million upgrade, but I think the stairwells weren't covered in that.
Correct.
The high school just got a pretty large amount of funding for new cameras, right? And they're already installed.
Yep, high school and Salem Wood, both of them.
All right. Are there any other buildings that we need to consider adding? Again, I know it's bad time with the budget, but cameras, are there any other facilities that we need to add cameras to?
I think honestly, our schools are covered really well as far as cameras and security are concerned. So we have a Siemens system in all of our buildings, and they all talk to each other. We can see all of them from. So I think we're in really good shape there. The school department and Anthony at our IT department, we've all been pretty good about working together to getting some grants and getting those cameras installed. So I think we're in good shape there.
Okay, that's all I had, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to be repetitive with all the other questions, but thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rubin.
Thank you very much, Councilor Spatafora. Councilor Murphy.
She's on mute.
He's muted.
Sorry, this is not a question, it's just a statement, just in case anyone's concerned about the lease item. As part of the municipal building committee that's worked on the new city hall, just want to let everyone know that we are really at the final stages. All the furniture has been delivered. It's really looking good inside. And, you know, I would assume that we would definitely be able to move 17 Pleasant Street into the new city hall prior to July 1st, which would take care of any additional rent. So only a statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. I don't see any other, I think everybody's who wanted to raise their hand and speak has. I will give you the floor for another minute if you'd like it, Mr. Rubin. If not, we can thank you for your time.
I'm good. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Chief Sullivan, thank you very much for your patience.
No, not at all.
Didn't spend so long talking about his buildings. We would have been up sooner. I apologize.
No worries, no worries.
Great. So I'm not quite sure if the well, I will give the floor to Chief Sullivan for a few minutes to frame the budget from your view and the challenges you face in the next year, and then we'll open up to questions.
Thank you very much. As you're aware, this is my first opportunity to appear before the council, and in this case, the Finance Subcommittee. As Chief of the Fire Department, I realized coming into this, it's a particularly difficult budget to prepare, and that there are still fiscal uncertainties as we enter FY21. Fortunately for us at this time, the 108 budgeted positions within the fire department are filled. It appears to me as though the budget is level funded. That's been the case over the last couple of years. Going forward, where as far as other expenses that we're preparing for, are mindful of the result of a couple of grants that we've applied for, should we be fortunate enough to be awarded them. Other than that, as far as challenges, it's always maintaining adequate staffing, safe staffing levels, as well as keeping up with training. We're a relatively young department at all levels. When you talk about not just time on the job, but experience levels in the ranking positions as well. So training is something that is, very important to me as a fire service leader. So, going forward, hopefully it won't prove itself to be challenging, but that's where we're at this point.
Thank you very much, Chief Sullivan. Councilor Condon.
Thank you, and congratulations, Chief. I haven't had the opportunity to congratulate you.
Thank you.
Well deserved.
Thank you.
To me, the obvious question is, what kind of shape is your capital equipment as far as vehicles and engines, ladders?
Yeah, that's a great question. At present, we're doing okay. The average age of the 6 pieces of fire apparatus that we have is 15 years old. We have an issue with one piece of equipment. I'll get to that in more detail in just a minute. We have an engine and a ladder truck that have been ordered. We hope to take delivery of them late summer, early fall. As they arrive, that will nearly cut the average age of our equipment in half. That would reduce it to 8 years. I've been working over the last month or so with Debbie Burke from the Malden Redevelopment Authority, writing a grant to the Gaming Commission for a second new engine. If we're fortunate enough to be awarded that, that would actually cut the average age in half once again to 4. Getting back to an issue that I just mentioned with one of the engines, I've been working with attorney Kate Fallon. We have an issue with a manufacturer, Pierce Manufacturing, with one of the engines relative to a corrosion issue in the frame rails, which is the main supporting component of the vehicle. as I said, we believe that it's covered under warranty. That's proven to be a lengthy issue, which, as I said, is now in the hands of Attorney Fallon. But, overall, so far so good. We're doing okay.
What about equipment for the men?
Relative to
Protective equipment?
safety equipment,
Yeah,
well, we replace turnout gear, or we purchase 20 sets of turnout gear. It's budgeted, it's level funded this year, 20 sets per year. It doesn't always require 20 sets. Every firefighter and fire officer is equipped with 2 sets of gear. It's probably at this point in my career, maintained better than at any other point, where we have, washing machines specifically manufactured to clean turnout gear, drying racks. So as far as personal protective equipment for the personnel, we're in good shape there.
Chief, do you see any, do you see much added expense due to the pandemic that we're in to your department?
Fortunately, relative to that, another grant, I did write a grant for reimbursement of some COVID-19 supplies to the tune of $10,000. A lot of the personal protective equipment has been supplied through MEMA, Massachusetts Emergency Management. There has been, given the incidents that we respond to and some of the patients that we're exposed to, we have had people, fire personnel, subjected to as much as the 14-day quarantine at different times. So there was a resulting overtime cost. Those numbers have been submitted to Controller Rannigan for reimbursement. So we're keeping track of that as well. So yes, there have been costs, but at the same time, we're staying on top of tracking them, and I believe the reimbursements will come through.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilor Condon. Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you letting me on. I have to jump off to another meeting on the vigil that starts at 7 o'clock. I'm going to be one of the speakers for that, so I appreciate you letting me in here. But Chief Sullivan, congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you.
And best of luck, and I know you'll do an excellent job as you've done in all the other positions that you've had.
Much appreciated.
Are we at full complement now in the fire department? I'm looking at the salaries, and I see that the firefighters' salaries have seemed to drop this year from last year. Why is that?
I'm not certain why there is a drop indicated there. Yes, we are at full complement. All 108 positions are currently filled. I believe the union just negotiated and settled a 2% raise with the city this past fiscal year. So I'm sorry, I would have to look into that.
Okay, yeah. Last year's adopted salary was $8,000,004. This year's proposed salary is $8,000,003. So I would assume that a whole bunch of money less this year than last. So that just kind of jumped out at me. And what is the apparatus that we're going to lease? That at the bottom of the $328,000. What is that piece?
I'm sorry, that was the engine and the ladder truck that we expect delivery of in late summer, early fall.
And so how does that compare with what we have currently for equipment?
You mean the types of vehicles?
Yes.
As far as
is that replacing something, or is that upgrading?
No, it's replacing again an engine and a ladder truck.
And how old is the ladder truck it's replacing?
The ladder truck is a 2001.
19 years, I see.
And the engine is a 1998.
Ah.
So they don't owe the city anything.
Oh, like all of us, I guess. Or at least some of us. Yeah, that's it for me. Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson. Councilor Murphy.
you. And I actually am unmuted this time. That's wonderful. You know, I'm just so thankful, and I'm sure you are, Chief, that we went through the process of ordering the pumper and the ladder last year.
Certainly.
That would have been a very different discussion if we were having that right now, trying to fit that in the budget. So I'm sure you'll all be very happy when it shows up. My question is about the CARES Act, and obviously I want to thank you for your forward thinking and applying for the different grants. And I guess a couple of questions I have is, you know, how much money do you normally receive in grants? And also how the CARES Act is helping you during this time.
Relative to the CARES Act, I'm sorry, could you, I've been involved with so many grants. Could you just familiarize me with the CARES Act? I apologize.
It's like kind of like the reimbursement for, you know, you mentioned that your staff.
Oh, okay, yeah. So again, relative to any overtime costs, I've been working with Controller Rannigan on that and just tracking any overtime costs directly related to members being out as a result of exposure to patients with COVID-19, potential interaction with those. And the other was $10,000 of cleaning supplies and such that we've purchased in addition to what we typically use to ensure that the facilities in the apparatus are cleaned.
Thank you, Chief. So, Chief, and this might be a question for Mr. Rannigan, our controller. If we do have a flare up and we do have to quarantine more of our firefighters, and I guess this would also hold true for our police officers, Mr. Rannigan, do you believe that CARES money will be available through the fall? Because, you know, obviously we've got to tighten our belts on overtime, and having that fallback of being able to get reimbursement from those funds would be, you know, a wonderful thing. Not that we want it to happen, but having that money available would certainly ease the burden on the financial picture.
Yeah, so the CARES Act money is available. The FY 2020 application deadline is next Friday. It was supposed to be tomorrow. They extended it 1 week. And then it's good until we have the ability to apply through the end of the calendar year. So it'll be December of 2020. Okay. So, you know, Chief Sullivan has sent me weekly updates in terms of directed COVID-19 overtime expenditures. That will be fully reimbursed, probably through a combination of FEMA and CARES Act funding. The same with the police, but we have until the end of the calendar year to get that reimbursement.
And I know, you know, Chief, you were mentioning that, you know, MEMA was, you know, giving us a lot of supplies, et cetera. Mr. Rannigan, are there any other areas where we can find reimbursement through the CARES Act for expenses that are incurring?
So for PPE supplies, the CARES Act requires that we start with FEMA. So FEMA offers a 75% reimbursement rate. The additional 25% would be reimbursed through the CARES Act funding.
Thank you. Most of my questions were asked by councilors before me, so I will pass on to the next person.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Councilor DiMaria.
Thank you, Chairman Kamel, and thank you, Chief Sullivan. Great job. Boy, you hit the ground running. You're doing a great job. I particularly want to say thank you for your grants, your grant writing talents. And I know last year the department figured out a way how to put in a handicap bathroom in the main ladder house. So I see that you're continuing on with that. So that's wonderful. Just, I think, two things. So the $150,000 decrease in overtime is because you anticipate the funding coming from the CARES Act?
No, the $150,000 reduction in the overtime line item was as a result of what we're facing, or the potential of what the city is facing with the reduction in funds coming from the state, I believe.
Okay.
Our hope is that some of that will be offset by a staffing grant that we're currently working under, and we should be rolling over at least, I'm gonna say at least $100,000 into the next fiscal year. If I'm not mistaken, it might be slightly more than that.
Okay, wow. Great job with the grants. That's just wonderful.
I can't take
the other
much credit. Certainly, Controller Rannigan and my predecessor, Chief Finn, also have done a great job in that respect as well.
It takes a village, doesn't it? That's great. The thing that I just am so happy that it's still being funded is the Public Safety Day. I went last year and I was blown away. It is a wonderful community event, and I'm so glad that it's being planned for next year. So I just want to say thank you for that. And your department is amazing, and we're all safe because of you. So thank you very much, Chief.
You're welcome. As I'm sure you realize, as far as Public Safety Day, again, Chief Finn kicked that off. It was a terrific initiative.
Yes.
It's been very successful, and it'll be an honor to continue his work.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for all you do. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Maria. Councilor Winslow.
Councilor Di Maria asked my question, so I'm fine. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Councilor Winslow. I see some hands up. I'm not sure if they're still up from before. Councilor O'Malley, did you have your hand up?
I do. Thank you.
Great.
Hey, Chief. Thanks for coming tonight.
Not at all. Thanks for having me.
I was doing some quick math and I saw that the overtime is over this year, 175, at least projected to be over. That's understandable with COVID-19, et cetera. But then I also saw that in terms of some of the unexpended funds, we're about at 200,000. Do you know why we might be under 200? I know that you're coming in halfway through, so.
Yeah, that may require me to take an additional look at the numbers, but I'm actually pleased to report that this year, as compared to last, at present, we're just about $62,000 below what we had spent in overtime at this point last year. So that's despite the COVID-19 issue. So I'm grateful for that. With respect to your specific question, I'd have to take a look at the numbers again and get back to you if I could.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. Councilor Condon, did you have your hand back up?
No,
Okay.
I'm fine.
And okay, great. Do I hear anybody else want to ask some questions? All right. Thank you very much. I will give Chief Sullivan the opportunity if he wants to take another minute or two. Give the floor back to him.
No, I appreciate that. Again, I hope the information I provided is helpful. If there are any questions beyond this or anything that I can help anybody with, certainly you have my cell phone number. You know where to find me. So please reach out. Don't hesitate.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Chief Sullivan.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so that concludes what we have on the agenda tonight. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion, Counselor.
Second.
Motion to adjourn. Councilor Di Maria, I believe it was seconded by Councilor Condon. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none and seeing none, the meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody, for coming tonight. Thanks for coming on the off night, and enjoy the weather, and I hope folks can join the online vigil. All right, take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good night.
Bye-bye.